Dr. Castleberry back with our final set of questions for week 1, COM 4413, Communication and Cultural Change. We're talking about television, we're defining it, we're looking at some stuff here. And we've got questions from the class, getting an asynchronous dialogue, moving along. So I'm going to look at some questions from Aaron. Aaron Stelter, welcome to the class. Starts with the question, did narrowcasting develop from a change in audiences, or did the television industry change audiences by creating narrowcasting? And we could go back and forth with that, and I think that's part of the fun, spunky nature of this question. It's very, what came first, the chicken or the egg? But all major changes will frequently result, what a terrible word to say. Many changes will result from the economic implications of viewer tastes, okay? Preferences and demand, consumer demand, and so it does become a game of economics, but also we've seen historically there are other factors to consider. Not everyone wanted to or was ready to or could afford to change over to high definition in the mid 2000s and the early 2000s, but they regulated this, right? They willed it into power and convinced the consumer, no, this is going to happen, and they manufactured lower costs for high definition TVs, or had rebates, right? Black Friday sales, all these kinds of things. But eventually they did shift the production end, right? So eventually all productions had to shift to high definition, just as many years before all productions eventually shift to color from black and white. And so sometimes you do see it coming from within the industry, and then other times, such as we see with streaming preferences, right? The proliferation of binge watching, items like that, you see consumers kind of shifting the way producers now think about television. There's a great book by prominent leading TV studies scholar Amanda Lotz that does get at the heart of some of these audiences versus industry changes. And I can locate that book. Oh wait, I see this one. It's called The Television Will Be Revolutionized, and highly recommend that read. I believe 2006 was the year it was published, NYU Press. But earlier, here it is. They're right next to each other. Okay, so Amanda Lotz, The Television Will Be Revolutionized. Yes, I got it right. Is an excellent read on that topic. And earlier when we were talking through John's questions, and I was discussing spatiality, right? The evolution of the living room space and all of that sort of stuff. And the excellent book of choice, how could I forget her name? Is you have to check out if you're into TV studies. Make Room for TV. This is a vintage classic now. Television and the Family Ideal in Post-War America, from Lynn Spiegel. And she's another foremost authority in television studies. Just excellent scholar there for you to follow, emulate, right? Piggyback her ideas, as well as Amanda Lotz, and good things will come from reading up on their contributions to the field. Another question from Aaron is, can you explain the term textual form from Mattel, recorded on pages 2 and 5? Textual is throwing me off a bit, presuming it refers to text from the source and owner's manual for television. But we never want to assume, so fair enough. We never want to assume. This is textual in and of, relating to aspects about a given text or texts. All right, so in relation to texts, the form of TV as a thing. I think this is me paraphrasing an additional excerpt from page 2 of Mattel. And so that, that's something to think about. Mattel refers to the initial textual existence of TV as a live broadcast, right? I think that it's referenced in that way. But what we're going to explore, and we're following his lead here, is how it was evolved over time, right? And these changes occur in production, in distribution, in consumer habits, and so on, right? In the content itself. And so I don't think we could narrowly define it any longer as that live broadcast, because indeed, as most of you report in your video responses and on the discussion board, the live broadcast, the live experience is no longer your a point method of TV consumption. So it's important to think about. Finally, I think I get. Whoa, no. This, but I'm going to back up. But this will still remain our final question for now. The text says staging is staging, right? Noun, or verb, is similar to the concept of mise en scène, which is a somewhat elusive term. Okay, so Mattel refers to mise en scène as a somewhat elusive term, page 177. Can you explain what it is and why the term is elusive? And an important question. This is a great term. Clearly, it borrows from sort of the French canon of film theory and film criticism, not unlike auteur theory. And so, when we're talking about mise en scène, Brian Henderson calls it the grand undefined term in his chapter The Long Take in the volume Movies and Methods from 1976. But in an effort to understand what Mattel means by elusive, I pulled out a sort of an anthology, wordplay, collected edition of Film Scholar works, and just so we could explore mise en scène with a little bit more diversity, right? To understand how and why it is an elusive term. Okay, so let's see. In one understanding, references that the cinema. All right, so some classic film theory here. It might get a little stuffy. Okay, so take the scarf off, whatever, or make the scarf tighter. I don't know how you read stuffy. Thus, the cinema assumes the role played throughout Western history by various artistic formations. The ideology of representation as a principal axis orienting the notion of aesthetic creation, and specularization, which organizes the mise en scène required to constitute the transcendental function, form a singularly coherent system in the cinema. All right, so what does that mean? Well, we probably have to read the whole chapter to get a better context. But that's from Baudry, essay Ideological Effects of the Basic Cinematographic Apparatus. All right, so moving along, we're being intentional here. Let me skip this one and say, looking at Elisaire's notes, okay, the expressiveness of mise en scène is in relation to, or could be in relation to, music, decor, fashion, gesture, vocal qualities, and so on and so on. And so in other words, there's a diverse breakdown of what this could include or entail. Yet another from Hansen in the essay The Mass Production of the Senses. Hansen recognizes mise en scène is broken down according to classical American principles of continuity editing, spatio-temporal coherence, and narrative causality. Again, we might be slightly pulling out of context there, but we're kind of getting at a point of its many theoretical facets and uses, just as I suspect throughout this course you will learn to identify some of its physical and visual uses and strategic placements. But finally, let's look at Serres. in the essay The Auteur Theory Revisited, in quoting French critic director Alexander Astruc, the inner quotation concludes, "So I consider mise-en-scène as a means of transforming the world into a spectacle given primarily to oneself. Yet, what artist does not know instinctively that what is seen is less important than the way of seeing, of it, or of a certain way of needing to see or be seen." Okay, so that's an excerpt from Astruc in Serres, and then Serres' conclusion here is, I would suggest a definition of mise-en-scène that includes, here we go, all the means available to a director to express his or her attitude toward his or her subject. Okay, so it's similar to some definitions of rhetoric, right? All of the available means of persuasion. And here we're seeing it defined as all the available means to a director to express their attitude toward their subject. Very good. All right. That concludes our week 1 lecture for Common Cultural Change, our introduction to TV studies. And we look forward to next week's discussion questions. Hopefully we'll have questions from more folks. And then hopefully we will have more questions from additional readings, perhaps even all the readings for the week.